with the Project Advantage podcast. Today I have Melissa Dixon with us from Trimble. Melissa is Senior Product Manager for the Construction Supply Chain Division. Melissa, excited to have you today. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Cory.
So I guess just to start, if you wouldn't mind giving our audience just a brief overview of Trimble for anyone who might not be familiar, and we can go from there.
Sure. So thanks for having me again. I'm Melissa Dixon. I'm a product manager in our construction supply chain division, and I'm working primarily on, some digital supply chain initiatives, which I know we're going to talk a lot about today. But Trimble is a global company. They have a lot of different sectors across agriculture, transportation. Where I focus on is in our construction sector and specifically in the MEP space. So working primarily with electrical and plumbing, mechanical distributors, contractors, and manufacturers. So, really spanning across all of the personas that are investing in that digital supply chain. I've been working in that space for, since 2013 when Trimble acquired Trade Services, which was a company that's been around for 94 years working in the content space with manufacturers. So I worked with Trade Service for many, many years before that. I think I've been in the construction space for over 25 years. So super excited to be here, super excited to be representing Trimble. We're really expanding in our construction sector and really expanding in obviously digital supply chain. It's a hot topic. So hoping to talk to you about that today.
Awesome. So when thinking about digitizing the business, either for a contractor or a distributor, I mean, one of the things that comes to mind for me right away is, when does it make sense? What scale do I need to be at? If I'm a firm with 20 employees versus a firm with 200 employees, like, when does it make sense to really think about digitizing and, going to a platform like this?
Yeah, I think it makes sense for anyone at any size. And the reason I say that is because we are working in a space where we are doing things very manually, right? So I'm talking to companies who have 200, 2,000 employees, and they're still doing things via email, spreadsheet. We are very unique in construction that we are not moving, and Cory, you and I talked about this a little bit. We're not moving from one software to another, right? It's not like Trimble's coming out and saying, hey, you're already using this digital, communication platform to communicate with your suppliers, and we want to move you to this new, cooler one that Trimble has come up with. We are going out into a construction space where, contractors are contacting their suppliers, their distributors on the phone, right? They are calling and ordering materials. And so we are truly digitizing the space. We are trying to take people from those manual workflows to a digital solution. And we see that across all companies, it's regardless of size. So it's a very interesting space to be in because the other piece of it is how do you make a software easier than a phone call, right? It's not that we've already migrated everyone over to a digital space. We have to implement something that is easier and as trustful as calling your, inside sales rep, right? How do you do that? How do you digitize that process and that workflow? So it's been a very interesting space. I've been working with contractors a lot and what their process is from the field, from the office, and how they communicate with their suppliers. And it's a very unique space. We are in a very interesting time in construction to be moving into kind of some of those digital workflows.
So Melissa, so back to digitization. One of the things that we see quite often. So, we're a manufacturer, so our products get spec'd into projects. Uh, Good example. There's a military base that has spec'd in a few of our products for one of their upcoming projects, and that project has to go out to bid. Goes out to bid. Sometimes we get both contractors and distributors. Sometimes some of the smaller distributors will also have an in-house contracting arm. So they'll distribute, but they'll also do the work or at least subcontract out the work. I can't even on two hands point to how many different ways we receive the same data about the same project. And a lot of that is because people are getting this request, they're going on to the SAM system, they're seeing the RFQ, and then everyone's manually putting it together and sending it out to the different manufacturers that are listed on the spec. And it becomes difficult because, then at times too, for us it's a little difficult sometimes because different people are getting that request because it looks different and there's no way to capture it the same. Whereas if, more and more uh, contractors and distributors move to platforms like this, it actually helps them get what they need back faster from manufacturers.
Yeah, and that leads to how we're kind of doing this, right? We talk about digitizing the supply chain. What does that mean? So what we're trying to do at Trimble is exactly what you kind of just said, Cory, is create a platform between all three of those personas, right? From the manufacturer to the supplier to the contractor. And we're trying to use content as the connector beneath, right? So one of the things I always say is, how many times across a project did you enter in one item? Like, how many times did that get entered into a spreadsheet, into an email, into a phone call, into a system if you are using any kind of digital tools? It's it's insane at how manual and how often we are doing manual processes. And it's just leads to errors and overruns and costs um and materials left on the site. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a platform that is powered by content, and we're using content that we're sourcing direct from manufacturers like yourself and streamlining that through the platform to the distributors, and then taking the distributors data and streamlining it to the contractors. So we are truly trying to create a platform so that that item is the same item in every single system that you're using. And that's going to reduce all of those manual entries and reduce kind of some of those errors and those overruns and what we're seeing at the end of a job.
Yeah, and so it's really not about, I actually hate the word now that I've said it a few times, digitizing. As you said, like, what does that mean? Like, it's such like industry jargon, which no one really cares about who is actually trying to solve a problem. So, just like in our business, your business, you're trying to solve a problem, and the problem is that processes are clunky, the data gets lost when it's in pen and paper, and we can use technology to our advantage to move faster, to grow faster, to be more efficient, to help offset, impacts of things outside our control, like tariffs or like products being out of stock. And that's really what it's about. It's not just doing it because it's what's hot and trendy and there's companies that will offer you a service. It's about solving the problems.
My journey in this digital supply chain, right, all started at the contractor, and I was talking with our contractors, and I just kept hearing over and over again, and so did all of my colleagues at Trimble. At the end of a job, what were your pain points, right? And it was just like, oh my god, it was a mess, right? I have a whole like slew of materials that I'm just throwing away, or now that I have to figure out how to store. One contractor I talked to, he was like, I ordered 10,000 of the wrong thing because someone actually fat fingered in like aluminum and we needed stainless. And, talking to those contractors at the end of the job, and it's like, well, what did you learn? Well, nothing. Like, I'm just going into the next job because I don't have any time and we're moving fast because construction is one of the fastest moving industries. And it's like, wait, we can do this better, right? We can plan better, all the way from pre-construction. So from the estimate, from the 3D model, all the way through to ordering the materials. And I think it all comes down to that standardized content underneath it all, because we have to have the right data from the manufacturer. You talked about tariffs, right? If we don't know, let's say, like the country of origin, the country where this is manufactured, if we don't have that attached to that item, in that platform, right? Everything falls apart because then you're calling, you're emailing, you're checking to make sure that that item is truly what it is and it's truly being manufactured from where it's stated, or that it fits into the specs of that project. And so we have to, as Trimble, make sure that that content in that platform is absolutely 100% correct and real time. That's the other thing, is we can't be sourcing data from a manufacturer, let's say once a month. Things are changing too rapidly. I mean, we need to be sourcing that data real time on a daily basis, up to the minute pricing and information on that item, or else, again, the whole thing falls apart. So I come from a content background, so I'm a little bit of a data nerd, if you will. I always think it comes down to having that data lake that is powering that platform and making sure that that is 100% accurate. Because again, like, we're trying to replace, that trust factor, not replace it, but recreate it. And we have to know that that data that the platform is running on is correct. Or else, yeah, again, the whole thing falls apart.
So we had a project that one of our products was specified in on. It was a big industrial project. The Somewhere along the line, before the project came back to us to actually procure, someone fat fingered our product SKU and switched one of the letters. And I've also seen other instances where, they dropped a dash and changed one of the numbers, or just weird things happen sometimes. And no one cares if it takes us more time, and that's fine. But the problem is, then we're going back and asking. We can't just send you a quote if we don't know what actual product you're trying to procure. And often a lot of these, as you mentioned, like, there's so much work out there to be done. There's such a backlog that they don't even have time in many cases to respond to us, to try to figure out from the end user, from the engineer, about, well, what did they mean by this SKU that's not a real SKU? And it's a year and a half into the project, and the engineer signed off 12 months ago and is nowhere to be found now. And so, to me, from our vantage, like, that's a place where, you know, these customers of ours, can really save a lot of time and headache of, you know, why is this supplier, chasing me now about something that I don't know. I just need a quote. I don't care what the SKU is. I just need a quote. And I get that, but we can't do our job to help them if the data is not right. So the data integrity is just so important, and, definitely a huge fan of what you guys are doing to try to standardize it all. Um, you brought up tariffs. You know, it's such a big problem. It's a big story, for everyone, even outside of procurement. But I think, just what we've seen is that the biggest thing people are worried about is not necessarily, was it made in this country versus USA. Now, there's certainly exceptions, when you're talking about some different government projects where there's no exceptions whatsoever except for American made. But what they're really concerned about at a ground level, working on these projects, is, how does it impact my cost? And am I going to get surprised by an additional 50% surcharge because I didn't know where the product was manufactured, and that manufacturer is now going to pass it along at the 11th hour? And that's what's really scary for a lot of the customers.
Yeah. I think it's just, you mentioned, like, fat fingering, and it was a different SKU. It's like, you replace a letter and all of a sudden it changes from domestic to import. I mean, we're talking about, like, just the most minor details, and it can throw a job completely off course, right? And throw your costs completely off course, which is exactly what we are trying to solve for. And again, I think it comes down to just making sure that that data is traveling and that there's good content behind the scenes. You mentioned it before, like, we'll talk to a guy out in the field, a contractor out in the field, and they're ordering materials and they don't care what the SKU is, right? Like, they need, 1,000 feet of wire on the site by the end of the day. And so they're going to literally just send that to whoever is doing the purchasing. But who's doing the purchasing cares, because they're looking at the specs of the job, and they have to know what exactly they need to buy or if it has to be made in America. So they care about the data behind the scenes, but maybe not as much as even the supplier, right? Because when they get it, they have to know what they're stocking and they actually have to know the SKU so they can communicate with their manufacturer. So you're dealing with all these different personas. And again, the same item traveling throughout the entire job. But if we can build behind it all of the content that's needed by the different personas, right? Maybe your designer or detail needs, the dimensions. Well, then the purchaser doesn't need the dimensions. He needs the SKU and the material. And then, it's all these different people needing different pieces. And if we can just build all of it into the one record and then and use that on the platform. Again, we can give the pieces of information that are important to each person throughout the workflow, all the content that they need at that time. And I think that's where it's really critical. And that's what we're trying to do is create kind of that golden record and travel it through the entire workflow for all the different people touching it. And what we get at the end is insights, right? We don't have a lot of time. We've got a huge backlog. We're going to the next job. But if we have that golden record, we could say, hey, you you had this in your model, you had this in your estimate, then you purchased it, and then it was fulfilled. It was fulfilled by this supplier and this manufacturer. And we can start to layer AI on top of that and get some insights quickly that can help us in planning the next job. Imagine what we can do if we have, traceability of all of our materials from start to finish. I mean, what we're looking at here is truly revolutionizing the industry and being able to start getting predictive analytics on jobs, which is really what we are trying to do is get to that point in the process.
Are you seeing any data changes, sort of, I guess, user behavior changes based on what's been happening with tariffs? Is that something you can see in the data? At
I think
more
what
of a macro level, not individual customer level, but, are trends changing in terms of what products people are looking at or how they're filtering or different things like that?
Yeah, we're just starting to scratch the surface, to be honest. We're just starting to kind of track that behavior as we start to get on these more digital platforms. Again, that's what we're driving to is exactly that, being able to see those trends, being able to see trends in materials so that we can say, hey, we're looking out 2 months and we can see based on what we've seen in the past that this material might fluctuate, and you might need to build that into your costs for this job. That's what we really want to get to, is being able to do exactly that. We're not there yet. Until we are using digital tools, we really don't have the ability to start reading those behaviors. Like you think about what we're doing today, I can't read the behavior of a phone call, right? Like there's nothing I can glean out of that. But if we can move to using digital tools, which is what we mean when we say digitization, is using software so that we can start going back and tracking those behaviors and seeing those trends so we can get those into the hands of all the people involved in the process so that they can start using it. I think that's more the goal, not where we are today.
Absolutely. And, one of the things, I guess, related to that we've seen too is, people also make assumptions in data when they don't have all the data. So, a product being manufactured in a certain country doesn't necessarily mean they always will pay a surcharge, but unless there's a system that can tell them that, oh, well, the product was manufactured in Mexico, but it's actually already here in the United States because that manufacturer's, factory they manufacture that product in is in Mexico, but they bring it into their warehouse here in Houston. There's no additional costs for the distributor to buy it that's going to be tacked on. And people get scared by the surprises because the surprises can completely throw any sort of economics out of whack for what they're expecting to make off of a deal.
Yeah, and we're in a weird time, right? We've never seen anything like this. We saw a little bit of it in 2020, but nothing like what we're seeing today. And what we're doing is Trimble is just tracking everything. Like we talk about like that kind of that data lake, that content library. I mean, we're washing the items as they travel through like the workflows today. And we're tracking, what the manufacturer is reporting on it. Once it gets into the supplier's hands, how that's affecting pricing. How it, even when a contractor estimates like on an item from then when it's fulfilled. So what we're doing right now is almost like sitting back, like eating the popcorn and watching like all of this stuff and tracking it. So that we can start saying, this is what we saw and this is what we think is going to happen. Again, like I think we're not there yet. But that's where we're targeting to go in the future is to be able to use what we're learning in this kind of volatile market to start making those predictions and trying to get into the hands of all of the people involved again, like those analytics.
So you had mentioned AI a little bit ago. So what what does it really mean for contractors and distributors? Is it something that's just going to be on the back end, like in a platform like Trimble, where it's going to help bubble up data that you might not have otherwise seen, or is it would you foresee it as something that more in their day to day is going to start having an impact and changing how their normal workflow operates?
When I think of AI, I think of it as not impacting anything, right? Like where I see AI being a real value is layering it on top of what we're doing today to help us get to that digital platform, right? So if the guy in the field doesn't want to change from just writing it down, okay, write it down. But we can use AI to extract that data and put it into that digital platform. So again, like we have the SKU and the materials and everything for the people downstream that's really critical to them. And then I think we can also layer it on top of that data that we're tracking right now and get the insights and those analytics into the hands of the people involved quicker. Right? I see AI as just helping us take everything we're doing today and streamline it into that platform so that we can get those analytics. I think AI in its best state should not affect you in any way. It should save you time. It should make what you're doing today easier and then get you, you know, some results as to what I'm seeing, what you're doing, and get that into your hands quicker. So I feel like AI is in the background making our lives easier, but does it shouldn't have like this direct effect on us. I think if it's doing its job, it's just making our jobs a whole lot easier.
Yeah, easier, faster, more efficient. I mean, we one of the ways we use it is, let's say a customer calls in and their their product specialist is unavailable to talk about a project, but they get someone else on the phone. They still want to give us all the data. Well, instead of it taking now an hour for us to get back because we need to go manually listen to the whole call and take notes on the call as we're reviewing it. The team instead gets an AI summary of the call that their counterpart had. They can just, quickly get caught up and then get back on the phone with the distributor to get them what they need. And so, yeah, I'm 100% with you that, the key is how can we use it to work better and smarter. It's AI, in my opinion, in this space is not going to be taking people's jobs or it's, there's not going to be a robot that shows up tomorrow that's going to start installing, lights or poles or fans. Um, as much as Elon would probably want them to, that's just not the reality of what's how it's going to work and how it's going to happen.
Yeah, and exactly. It's only going to make our jobs easier. I don't think you would talk to anybody in construction and they would say, "Oh, well, we don't have a huge amount of work that we could be doing." Right? Like it's quite the opposite. So if we could give you a tool to do your job 2 times quicker and get to the next job faster and make double the money, I don't think anyone would say, "Oh, I don't want that." One of the cool tools that we're working on right now is with invoices. Like so for a contractor, for a controller that is trying to take a paper invoice and map it up to what they actually bought and enter that into their accounting system, it takes hours for them to do that. And so we have a tool that just reads in the PDF and matches it up automatically and gives a readout to them that they can use to enter digitally into their system. I don't know any controller out there that wouldn't want that, right? Like, here, we're just going to do it for you and you still get to review it. You still can enter it in, make sure that it's going into AP all the right places, but we're just going to do all the mini matching for you. It's like, then you can just get those entered quickly and move on to your next task. So I think it's just going to make everybody's job 2 times easier and 2 times quicker so that you can do 2 times the work and make twice the money, right? Like, I don't think anyone wouldn't want that.
And so for anyone listening, if you get caught up on AI, you can now go to your boss and tell them you should be making twice as much money because you're twice as efficient. And that really could be how things are going. That you can now do the work of two people, but just as quickly as two people. And and so things will change, but it's not going to be you walk in one day and your job's gone.
Not at all. If anything, I think with all of the work that we have in construction today, I think we can just do things more efficiently. And I think that's what it's going to help us do.
So when thinking about other changes within the industry, for contractors and distributors, when you look at technology, I mean, what else is coming down the pipe? I mean, AI is such a big topic, so there's probably more areas in there, but what are you seeing on your end that's really going to be the next thing coming?
Yeah, I think, what we are most excited about at Trimble is really two things. And we've kind of touched on both of them, right? Our new procurement digital platform, which connects, the manufacturer data to the supplier and then connects the supplier data to the contractor. So we have a couple different products that play into that platform for the different people involved in it. But we're super excited about it. We think it's easy to use, it's accessible, it's going to use that AI to make things easier. And it's not just here's the solution and it's all in. I mean, change management is difficult, especially when you're going from manual workflows like we talked about at the beginning to like digital. And so we like to make things kind of bite-sized, right? Like, hey, that invoice matching, that sounds pretty cool. You can use that. Okay, let's maybe talk to your design detailer about like what software they're using to do 3D modeling. Okay, let's talk to the supplier and see how they're entering. Like baby steps, right? We're not going to just put AI on everything and it's just going to work seamlessly and everybody's going to be digitized, right? It's slowly
More
like
modular.
yeah, it's more modular. Like, let's just take this one step at a time, show you a tool that could save you, a lot of time and money and show you all of those different things that you can be using in your workflow. So we have a lot of solutions at Trimble. We don't want to overload our customers, whether it's a contractor, manufacturer, or a supplier. We just want to get the news out there, right? That there are tools that you can use that will save you time and money, that are digital, and that you can trust, right? We've put a lot of time and effort into testing these and making sure these workflows are something that can replace some of those manual workflows. So that platform, that digital platform, we're very excited about. And the AI on top of it is really the exciting piece. And it's simple. It's just taking AI and reading. If you're using a digital platform, we can track data from the very start to the very end. So all the way from when it's in an estimate, all the way to when that controller is paying for it, right? We can see that data traveling throughout the entire process. So every single item from the estimate to payment, we can see the fluctuations throughout the entire process. And we are putting AI on top of that and giving you those insights at the end of a project. So the benefits of digitizing are very, very real and tangible, right? If you're using these digital tools at the end of your job, we are going to give you all of that data and we're going to give you the AI tools to read the data and get the insights that you need. So we are really, really excited about that. We're really excited too about layering AI on top of data just to find things easier, right? Like, I need this SKU. Imagine if it was just that easy to like put that in and
That would
all
be
of a sudden,
nice.
yeah, it would be fantastic, right? And that's what we can do with that data that we have been working so hard the last few years at gathering and standardizing. Now we're just laying an AI agent on top of that and giving you search capabilities that are going to revolutionize the way we find data. So that's what we're really excited about at Trimble is that platform and what we can do with it. So that's really where I'm passionate about. And again, I think it's all about that content, and I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do with it by layering those agents on top.
And one of the big differences today, I would say most people probably when they're looking at a platform, they're thinking about like, oh, thinking in connection to probably Salesforce in the early 2000s, where it was like, okay, you're going to have to go hire, a full time Salesforce admin to set up your whole system for you. Software today, it doesn't work like that anymore in many cases. Some do, but I think the more agile, more forward-looking companies are building products that are easy to get into and aren't going to require you to, have to go find some expert who's going to be full-time sitting next to you trying to teach you how to use it anymore. And you know, for us, we're always, looking at new software and new opportunities to try to optimize our business to help customers. But none of those anymore require us to bring on a specialist just on that one product. And that's, that was a bit, in my opinion, a big barrier to why you haven't seen more distributors and contractors on platforms yet, is because that's where it started out, that you need this dedicated resource to help you do it.
It's such a great point. And as a software company, we are constantly tackling that, right? Like, how can we make this onboarding process as easy as possible? Because again, we're moving very quickly in construction. We don't have time to just say, oh, we're going to pause the job and train everybody on our team how to use this software. And we'll do a 3-day workshop and we'll all learn how to use it. I mean, that is just like, it's just not feasible. So we need to make this software so easy to to learn and install and roll out at a company. And that's a very difficult thing, a software company to do. And we talk a lot about AI, but seriously, that is making a huge impact in our onboarding, right? You put an AI assistant on top of software where it's so easy. It's as easy as, how do I use this? Where do I go? What do I do? We are in the process of, layering that on top of all of our products, because if we can make them that easy to roll out, then it becomes less of a, we're digitizing, right? We're just adopting a new software that's going to save us, time and money. Easy as that. It's very easy to learn and it's very easy to roll out in our company. I mean, that's the goal. We're not there yet at all, but it's definitely something we're striving towards, and a big focus of all of our different teams across all of our different software is reducing the amount of time it takes to implement and making it as easy as possible with support, and you know everything down the line, right? Not just implementation, but when you run into issues. So yeah, it's a big focus at Trimble to make that as easy as possible, and we're definitely using all of those AI tools to improve that as much as we can.
Melissa, is there any sort of um, data out there that your team has or has collected around, you know, what's the actual impact of a company going from, no digital systems, a traditional company, they're doing well, they're running fine, but they now make a switch to this. What does that input pack look like, 12, 24 months down the road?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yes, we are. For example, one of our new products at Trimble is Trimble Materials, and it's a material management platform for contractors, and it hooks into a distributor product, a supplier exchange, and basically connects the two. And we're starting to actually, as we roll this out, and contractors and distributors are adopting it, we're starting to get metrics, which is the really fun part, right? We kind of have touched on it a little bit, and we're only going to get those as we start to move more people onto a digital platform. But we're literally now able to say, hey, we're seeing a 50% time savings in, let's say, invoice matching, right?
Wow.
You are actually
That's a
able
big
to
that's a
process.
big improvement.
Yeah, you are actually able to process twice as many, not just saying that, but actually being able to show you the amount of items that you're processing, right? We're seeing for distributors entering in a like quote into their ERP system, dramatic time savings from that perspective. So it's really fun for us as a software company to, actually see the digitization and actually be able to present those savings to all of our different customers. It's a really exciting time.
Mm, that's great. It's 50% saving. I mean, and there's so many different areas that it can impact too. So you could see savings, within the accounting group, you could see savings with your procurement team and everywhere in between, which can really impact both the business growth and the productivity, which is great.
Yeah, and it's fun too to just talk to our customers and get kind of that feedback. I was talking to a sales rep at Ferguson that we're working with, and he was really cute. He was like, "Oh, I'm killing it! Like I'm entering in like the quotes and orders like twice as fast, and now I've got more time to
That's
do this
great.
and this." And yeah, it's just fun. Like that's the favorite part of my job is to go out and talk to our customers and actually get that positive feedback. I like the negative feedback too because that just makes us like push
Negatives
to be
make us
better.
better
But
too. We need the bad
yeah, make us
feedback to know how
better,
to
keep us
improve.
honest. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's fun. Like I'm excited about the space that we're moving into. I'm excited about what we can do. I think we're going to see a dramatic shift in what we can offer our customers in the next 6 months.
Awesome. Melissa, people who are interested in learning more about Trimble maybe have heard of it, but haven't necessarily seen the platform or want to learn more about it. Where should they go? How should they get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. Trimble's a huge company. So we have support teams, and I mean, you can just look us up, reach out. You can reach out to me directly, Melissa Dixon at trimble.com. We also have a ton of webinars and office hours where you can come and learn more about it. I personally run a whole bunch of those. I would love to get anybody who's interested information on that. We also have our Huge Dimensions conference coming up in November where we bring contractors, distributors, anybody who's interested in learning more about Trimble to our conference. It's in Las Vegas. So if anybody listening wants any more information, just reach out to me and I can get
We'll
you
include some
anything you
links
need.
in the episode as well so that people can get in touch. But Melissa, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Corey. It was fun.